Look, welcome back, and welcome to those who are new. For those who were not here, my name is Toby Barrow. I'm the CEO for Theodo in the UK. I run the UK, South Africa, and US businesses. And for those who don't know Theodo, we are a design and engineering group of about 800 people with global offices, and we help companies of any scale, really, disruptors, companies, modernize and grow by building and designing new technologies. And really, our focus is on becoming experts in the key technologies that enable us to do this, that are will really matter to our clients. And React Native is one such technology. And we have been in React Native for about 11 years. So we discovered the potential in 2015. I don't know if Marek is here. I can't see him. No, I thought he was. So Marek started the business 11 years ago. We've got about 150 engineers across the group who are dedicated to React Native. And really, over those 11 years, we've been building expertise and contributing to open source and the community. And of course, the React Native London meetup is the seed on which this is built. And I don't know if there's any React Native London people in here, but if you are, welcome. We had a lot of you here last year, and you are the foundation on which this is built. So we have a great speaker lineup today for you, from the big backers of React Native. So we've got Meta here, we've got Amazon, we have Microsoft to talk about the core React Native platform. And also we've mixed it up a little bit by having some companies here who are here to talk about their great stories of building React Native, including a number of different people such as Flipdish, who are a customer of ours, who are going to hear talk about a bit of the work that we did with them and that they are doing to launch over 5,000 apps in React Native. Importantly, we are also going to be talking a little bit about AI, AI, I'm sure you've heard about it. You only have to open a newspaper to see an awful lot about AI. And we've really chosen the talks quite carefully and curated the day to ensure that we're having a realistic conversation about AI, okay? That we're not just talking about the opportunities and how good it is and what it's good at, but also the challenges with AI, the struggles that AI still has. And at Theodo, we're doing quite a lot of work at the moment on R&D for AI, AI code modernization. We've done quite a lot of work now over the last 2 years on AI migrations. Last year, our co-founder talked about an AI migration that we did from native to React Native, and we've been doing a lot more since. So we're in a good spot now to really see where the constraints are as well. And I think as we talk about AI and React Native in the same breath, that we have to be having that really realistic conversation about it. So there's going to be some fantastic talks. Really looking forward to it. And last year we really talked about how React Native was increasingly capable of innovating the whole front-end experience using a universal first approach. We talked about how React Native as a technology had really come on an awful lot. And even the really highly regulated industries like banking and healthcare were adopting this technology. We've got Chase here to talk about. So Soren from Chase is here to talk about security and React Native. So that'll be a really interesting talk. But actually, amazingly, when you consider how much we thought React Native had really moved, the pace of change in the industry over the last 12 months has been unbelievable. So we'll be talking a lot about that today. So I'm sure you'll have a really fantastic day. My job is not to stand up here for too long. So I really just wanted to do two things before I do hand over. I wanted to thank our sponsors. Firstly, I wanted to thank Amazon. Is Raphael here? I'm going to call you out. I know you don't want to be. There you are. There you are. I told you I'd do this. So Raphael and the whole Amazon team, thank you, because you sponsored us the last 2 years in a row. You've been our main sponsor, and it really would not have been possible without you guys. So thank you. We've really enjoyed the work we're doing with you on Vega, and yeah, really respect all the stuff you do for the community. It's mega. And also, of course, to thank our other sponsors, so Chase, are sponsoring us for the first time, and Expo, our friends at Expo are back. But also, if you can see, 11 Labs, Code Magic, Bitrise, Maestro, Fruitful, and Spinx. Thank you so much for your support, because without you guys, we could not have got this off the ground. And finally, I really just wanted to mention the React Native London team at Theodo. You guys are amazing. Last year you had to do it without any marketing support at all, which was incredibly difficult. And this year, Ola, thank you so much for helping the team. You've done an amazing job. And this is an incredible venue. And the goodie bags have even got even better this year. So that's great. So thank you to Ola. Thank you, Michael, Dan, and Callum Callum, and John T, who's not here, who's having a baby, has been massively involved, and of course Mo. So thank you. I think we should give a big round of applause to the sponsors and to the Theodo team who have done this. It's an amazing job. Okay, I'm going to hand over to a man who likes to talk an awful lot, especially about React Native and AI. So you're very lucky. He'll be your MC of the day, our one and only, Mo Khazali.
Morning, React Native London. How are y'all doing? There we go. Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for coming back to RNLConf. For those of you here for the first time, we're so happy to have you joining us. And for those of you who have come back, thank you again for choosing this event and choosing to come back. We've got a really great day lined up, and we're so excited to have you here. And as Toby mentioned, I think we're all beyond proud as the RNL team of how this community has grown and continues to expand. Now, Toby mentioned AI, and you're probably expecting me to talk about AI for this entire keynote. Trust me, you will hear a lot about AI, and we have a lot in our lineup about AI-related topics. We're going to talk about it, but I want to take a step back first. In 2024, our very first edition, we brought together people from all around the world, and I think some incredible stories were shared. And I want to touch on just a few of them today. We had industry veterans like Charlie Cheever sharing stories from the early days of the mobile era and how React Native became the technology that Expo placed its bets on very, very early. We also had people like Dan Abramov and Samuel Newman talking about how React Native was helping them build blue sky across web and mobile with a single team, competing with the likes of Twitter. And it didn't fully hit me at the event, but at its core, last year's RNLConf had a very clear thread running through it. React Native was becoming the technology to build apps, not just for mobile, but across TV, web, desktop, VR, AR, you name it. People were using React Native to just build great products and bring them to life across every platform. We wrapped up last year's conference with a panel discussion that was aptly named React Native Beyond Mobile. And we explored how React Native was evolving into a truly universal front-end technology. Now, I was moderating the panel, so I was mostly just asking the questions. But at the very end, Anisha, one of our panelists, turned to me and asked me why I was so passionate and invested in the React Native ecosystem. And my answer then was that I see React Native as a technology that lowers the barrier to entry for anyone to be able to start building great products. It empowers those individual engineers and small independent teams to take an idea and turn it into a real app that they can share with the world. And I really do believe that, because I started building off mobile apps in Objective-C. And this was back in the UIKit days. Some of you will remember this interface. It was a time. And this was right before automatic reference counting was introduced. So you had to manage your memory all by yourself, which was utterly painful. And I remember how hard it was to learn as a self-taught developer. I had a lot of ideas that I wanted to build out. It was really like my passion. But I just was very hard to wrap your head around all these different concepts and the gotchas that could be waiting for you at every step. Fast forward a decade, React, and by extension React Native, makes it so easy in comparison to build real good native apps. Turning an idea into a prototype suddenly became a matter of hours rather than weeks. And with tools and SDKs like Expo, it almost feels like magic. And it turns out this wasn't just my experience, because at the conference, one of the attendees came to me after all the talks were done And he said to me that my comment about React Native leveling the playing field and reducing the barrier to entry had really stuck with him. This attendee shared their story with me. They came from a background where they didn't have access to a formal computer science education, and they had to teach themselves how to code. They couldn't afford to buy a Mac to build iOS apps natively, so that was another barrier. And then they stumbled onto React Native and Expo Go. And suddenly, they were able to build an app that they had always wanted to build. And that app helped them end up landing a job at a startup and basically kickstarted their entire career. And stories like this exist all over the world. And meeting people like him is one of the best parts of a community and of a conference like RNLConf. So, what's been happening since 2024? What are the key things that have changed since then? I want to touch on 3 major events. Of course, there's been so much that's been happening in the ecosystem. You're going to hear a lot from the talks today that cover what's new and the latest and greatest developments in this space. But I want to touch on 3 major things because I think these are pivotal moments. As you heard over the last few months, Meta has been really doubling down on React and React Native. So Jorge, who's here in the audience, announced the React Foundation, which I think is an incredible step that we're going towards to keep React sustainable in the long term. And it shows that React has really grown and evolved beyond any one company. But also, we know that 1.0 is on the horizon. I think that's what you announced, Jorge. So 1.0 is on the horizon. But if you look more practically, Meta is really doubling down on using React Native. So I've got a very small screenshot of the Instagram app that's built for Quest. And the team at Meta works really hard to be able to evolve and adapt React Native to support building Instagram on Quest. These were formerly native apps that were built on in the mobile ecosystem were built natively, are now being adopted into React Native for the newest devices that Meta's releasing. It really shows that there is active effort and a lot of good work going into making React Native as mature as possible. As Toby mentioned, our friends from Amazon have been working really hard on Vega OS, and they launched their new Fire TV sticks. And I think this is pivotal, right? It's easy to overlook this and say it's just TV apps, but the fact that another big tech player has so publicly endorsed and placed its bets on React Native says that this technology is here to stay. And our friends at Expo recently announced the Expo App Awards. Now, why do I mention the Expo App Awards? Because I think that it was the first time where we brought together a big collection as a community of apps that were built with React Native and Expo. And you suddenly have this portfolio of great, really phenomenal apps that have amazing UX and are just pleasant experiences for you to use as a user. And so it gives us very good examples to look at and point at and say, yes, it can be done in React Native, to quote William Candion, and that you can build phenomenal apps with React Native. We have one of those apps here, and they're going to be sharing the story on stage, so the folks from Runa are going to be talking about that. But there are some phenomenal apps, some of the top charted apps in the ecosystem that are built on Expo and built on React Native. And so if we take the technologies sort of follow an S-curve, we have sort of the different phases of React Native. And if you take that the early adopters and quitters of React Native are Airbnb, the Shopify's jump in during the growth phase, I think the point of maturity is the long-awaited 1.0 release of React Native. And it's pretty clear that React Native is starting to hit that point. So we're probably very close to that peak of maturity. And so what does a React Native that is mature mean for us? What's next for this ecosystem? Where do we go from here? What happens in the wider industry? What happens in the market? Now, this is where I switch a little bit. I did say at the beginning of the talk that I'd be talking a little bit about AI. It is the elephant in the room. The robots are coming. So GenAI is here, whether we like it or not. It's a reality that is now very clearly entrenched into every part of a developer's life. You can't go 10 minutes on any IDE without seeing a pop-up that says you can use a Copilot or you can use an AI-assisted tool, right? And it's so tempting for us to ignore it and say it doesn't really affect us in the React Native community. But when we look a little bit more critically at it, and you assess the breakdown of code that's public on the internet, that the LLMs have naturally been trained on, you see that it's predominantly JavaScript and TypeScript, far above any other language and ecosystem out there. And then you compare that to other technologies used to build mobile apps, and you realize that the distance is just so vast. There's a huge, huge gap. And a large portion of JavaScript and TypeScript code on the internet is React. And so almost by coincidence, React and React Native has found itself in a position where it's at the forefront, intertwined in some sort of big wave of GenAI that's taking the entire industry by storm. And the proof for this is you just need to go out and look at the market of these AI app builders that exist. The majority of them build their apps with React and React Native under the hood. So if you look at the code that's being generated by these app builders, they're all React and React Native code. Replit is actually quite nice to use, uses React and React Native, generates React and React Native. The new V0 app, built with React Native, generates React code. Lovable uses React under the hood. Even Google's Firebase Studio couldn't escape this fact. So Google works on Angular, they're very proud of Flutter, right? The examples on their first marketing page is a React app. It's pretty clear, there's no running away from it. And React has been on the top for a long time as a UI library. And there's been other UI libraries trying to unseat React. But now that there's more software being written than ever with AI tools, the lead is only going to increase and that gap is only going to widen. This is not going away. And so this puts us, as React and React Native engineers who've been doing this for a little while, in a very interesting and almost advantageous position. And so you'll see in the tagline for the conference this year was build once, evolve forever. And I think that both building and evolving apps can benefit from intersecting and embracing, to a realistic amount, this intersection of React Native with AI. If we go back to the idea of AI-powered app builders for a second, it's so tempting as developers who know how to code well, who've been doing this for years, to just shrug them off and say they're no good vibe coding tools. I have done this. This is what my attitude has been for the last several months. But then over the last few months, I started to realize that I'd been looking at it from the wrong lens. I genuinely now believe that there is a use case, even for experienced developers, to use some of these easy app builders that are out there. These tools are fundamentally great for you to quickly prototype an idea for a new design, a new feature, or maybe even an entire app, and just have something that's on a canvas for you to start off with. In the same way that some of the greatest writers out there, some of the greatest authors struggle with writer's block, I feel like us developers and tech teams can have a similar block when it comes to building great products. And I found that getting together and quickly prototyping a bunch of different options can really help unblock this. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that I was struggling with a little while back was figuring out how to lay out a specific app. And this was like a couple months ago. This was trying to get an idea of what layout worked best. And I had this idea to just bring together some design folks and product folks and some tech folks around a V0 canvas. Did a little bit of prompting and said, generate in these dimensions, gave it some design tokens, and was like, I want a few options of seeing this in this layout and this layout and this layout. And very quickly, within a matter of 3-4 minutes, I was able to quickly get that on a visible demo, and then sit with the product and the design teams to make a quick decision. And you may choose to actually build on top of the prototypes that these app builders generate, or you may completely discard it away and just rebuild it yourself from scratch. But regardless, it helps you take the first step. And it allows you to start from somewhere, think of a feature that you're building, and almost dry run it like a sounding board. So it's an incredible way to conceive and start the building process. But chances are, if you're here today, you will already have an app that you work on and you maintain. And an app usually lives for a period of many years. And over time, the ecosystem evolves and your app needs to keep up. I had a really fun time looking at pictures of Instagram over the years. It looks night and day. And this is where there's been less of a focus on with AI coding, but I actually think this is where AI is most underutilized and perhaps the most useful. Now, these evolutions come in many different shapes and sizes. They can be as big as the technology you've used to build your apps with at the fundamental level. And we've seen examples of large ecosystem players like Shopify migrating their apps from native apps to React Native. Those of you who were here, as Toby sort of alluded to, at RNLConf last year will remember a talk that Fabrice and Jan from our team gave. It's a story of an actual project that we worked on where our team was able to migrate a 7-year-old native app with over 120 screens to a single React Native app in a matter of 4 months. By all estimates, this was going to take 10, 12 to 18 months. Different people had different ranges for this, to actually manually migrate over to React Native. If you haven't heard that talk, I'd highly recommend you give it a listen because it's incredibly interesting. You can go on the RNLConf YouTube and check it out. But it shows that the best way to use AI is not necessarily this agentic vibe coding approach, but it's building very specialized tools that understand the context of a language and a technology in the state that it was before and where you want to get to in the future. And so this is R&D that I've been personally involved in over the last year, and it's honestly something that I'm super excited about. And rather than go on about it on stage because I'm running out of time, my colleagues Ben and Merrick are at the Theodo booth downstairs. You'll see this little T icon. There's a pun in there. You can go ask Ben about it. And they can talk you through the approach and tell you how it could potentially apply to certain React Native apps. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two about them and have a nice chat with them. But given that you're at a React Native conference, I assume the vast majority of you will probably be thinking, I already have a React Native app. The reality is that these evolutions still happen even if you are on the right technology, even if your app is still in React Native. And I'll give you a few examples. There may be a library that is no longer maintained and you need to migrate away from. I actually had this exact problem earlier this year on a web project. It was an entire design system that was using styled components. And when styled components got deprecated, we need to migrate it off styled components. Now, the team was spending hours migrating components by components, one by one, but they'd already made some good headway. It was taking an average of 2 hours to migrate each component to a new styling solution. So we decided to spend a couple hours to try to see if there was some custom tooling that we could make that could understand the previous styled components really well, the full design system context, and some updated examples of a new component. And with some clever context engineering, giving it the right amount of details and some examples of good components, with some good prompts, we were able to bring that time down from 2 hours to 10 minutes per each component. It made a massive difference, right? You've saved so much time and you don't need to argue with your PMs about if you have the time to actually tackle your tech debt, right? It was the first time that I felt we could actually handle the tech debt problem in a good way. But oftentimes there are key UX and ecosystem changes that your apps need to adapt to anyway. And delaying these makes your app feel like they're a bit out of date. Earlier this year, Apple introduced liquid glass. And unlike certain other technologies who are still struggling to adapt it, React Native apps were demoing liquid glass pretty much within weeks from the WWDC announcement. Now, in reality, it's a bit more work than just an Xcode update. If we look at like the tab bar example in a large-scale app, if you've been using non-native tab bars, it will take a bit of work to migrate over to the new, quite literally shiny, liquid glass tab bar. But adapting to these changes can become so much smoother by creating the right tooling to help you get through the grunt work. But it's not just app developers. And I want to wrap it up by bringing it back to the conference today. People that are building the core platforms, the libraries, and the open source projects, and the maintainers are actually using AI to help them build out key features in the projects that they maintain. I remember a few months back, I was talking to two of the maintainers of popular open source libraries in the React Native ecosystem, both of whom who are quite coincidentally in the room here today and are doing a joint talk. And they were telling me separately how they had used AI to help them prototype some of the core features that they were working on. And this is really cool. And this perfectly demonstrates the core message that I'm trying to relay to everyone in the room here. When you bring people who really understand the platform, who really understand the technology incredibly well, and you augment them with the ability to automate some of these repetitive tasks and give them the ability to have someone to bounce ideas off of, it's a really powerful combo. And I think our lineup today is really trying to demonstrate that. We brought together core platform and ecosystem maintainers with talks and panels about realistic, practical use cases for AI that intersect the two together. And I hope that everyone in the room can really take something home today. For the AI enthusiasts in the room, I hope that you can just explore some different use cases to build on top of the workflows that you already have. And for the AI skeptics in the room, of which I'm sure there's many, I hope that you try to pick up something useful that can help you in your day-to-day, even if it's very small, and make things a little bit more interesting and a little bit more productive, even if it's marginal, so that you can focus on the things that you really care about, which is building great apps and great products that you can be proud of and share with your friends and your family, and hopefully, not to sound corny, with the rest of the world. And that's really the core message of this year's RNLConf.